This is MATHguide.com, and my name is Mark Karadimos. In this video, you are going to learn how to take complex zeros, move to factors, and then move to the polynomial. So you're going to see the connection between zeros, factors, and polynomials. Let's get started. So before we get started into the examples, there's a few things you need to know, like what's the connection between the zeros, factors, and the polynomial? Well, let's say that we had these zeros. I could have any number, so let's say they all go up to z, or not, doesn't matter. Let's say I had these. If these are all numbers and they represent the zeros, in other words, where they cross the x-axis, this is where the polynomial crosses the x-axis at these specific x values. Well, what we can do to find the factors is do this. So you basically take these zeros and you subtract them from x. Almost opposites. Okay, so then I could take these factors and multiply them together to actually get the polynomial. Okay, so there's one connection between the zeros, factors, and polynomials. Okay, now there's something else. Well, you also need to know something about complex conjugates. So if, for instance, let's say that I had a imaginary zero, and let's say that this represents an imaginary zero, hence the I there. I stands for the square root of -1 if you don't recognize that. Well, it turns out that if bi is a zero, then so is negative bi. These are complex conjugates. They go together. It's like they're twins, except there's like an evil twin and a good twin. They go together. So that means if there's bi, then x minus bi has to be a factor, and x plus bi has a factor. Okay? So they go together, these complex conjugates. They're pairs, and you'll always see them together. All right, so now using this knowledge, we'll do a couple examples. So I've placed on the screen there 3 zeros. So let's say we knew that a certain polynomial had these zeros. In other words, this is where they cross the x-axis, and then there's this imaginary zero, which does not cross the x-axis there. That's an imaginary axis. Anyhow, let's say that these are the zeros. What we can do then is write the factors. So the factors would, of course, be kind of opposites. Okay, now you got to be careful, though. So you would assume that these are the 3 zeros, then there's the 3 factors that correspond. Well, there's a sleeper here that you can't see. So if there's the complex 0i, there also is going to be its conjugate, negative I. They're like that. So that means there's this hidden factor, x plus I. Okay, so be careful. This polynomial actually has 4 zeros, not 3 like we were given. So be careful there. Okay, now that we have all the 4 factors, we're going to multiply these factors together. So what I always suggest doing is multiplying the complex conjugates together first. And you should be masters of multiplying at this point. I would use a table of values, table to actually multiply this. Or I'm going to use FOIL. X times x is x squared. X times I is ix, or xi. Okay, let's multiply negative I times x. It's negative ix. Let's multiply negative I times I, which is minus I squared. Okay, which we can clean up. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to clean up. See that these two guys cancel. And remember that I squared is equal to -1. So this is the opposite of -1, which must mean it's +1. Okay, now let's multiply these together. So I'm not going to show the table, but at least you'll see that x times x is x squared. You'll see x times 3 is 3x. you'll see negative 2 times x is negative 2x, and negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. All right, these two in the middle can be combined, and you get x, or 1x. Okay, now I got to multiply these two polynomials together. Again, if you're not, fast at this or accurate with this, I'd say make a table. I'm just going to keep using the distributive property. So x squared is being multiplied by all this. So x squared times x squared is x to the 4th. X squared times 1 is x squared. I'm leaving a space for x cubed, as you'll see why in a second. X times x squared is x cubed. X times 1 is x. Negative 6 times x squared is negative 6x squared. Negative 6 times 1 is negative 6. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to combine all these together. So I'm going to get x to the 4th plus x cubed minus 5x squared plus x minus 6. There you go. Let's move on to the next example. So again, I have 3 zeros there, and I want to figure out what the factors are and what the polynomial is that has these zeros. Okay, be careful. There is this sleeper here. Remember complex conjugates. So this would be a 2 plus I. These are conjugates. Notice I just take the opposite of that middle or the imaginary part. Those are conjugates. They're not opposites, they're conjugates. Okay, so now let's go to the zeros. Well, I take x and I subtract this. I take x and I subtract negative 1. That's a plus 1. Now if I take x and subtract this, yes, I'm going to get this value. In other words, I'm just taking the opposite of all of this and putting it next to the x. Or x subtract all this. So if I subtract 2, if I subtract I, there you go. So unfortunately, now I have to multiply this mess together. I'm going to do this one fairly quickly. And again, if you need to use a table, go right ahead and do that. But this is what you should get. That's a 4 there. All right. Now we have to multiply this monster together. Okay, so let's show more of this work. So x times x is x squared. X times negative 2 is negative 2x. X times negative ix. Negative xi. Doesn't matter. Okay, now let's move on with the negative 2. Negative 2 times all this. So negative 2 times x. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. Negative 2 times negative I, which would be positive 2i. Okay, now let's do I times x. Ix. I times negative 2 is negative 2i. Losing my place here. And then I times negative I would be a negative I squared. Okay, so what are we going to do? We got to clean up that mess. All right, so what do we get? Well, these two combine to get negative 4x. And see how it makes it easier when you line up the like terms when you multiply. These two cancel. These two cancel. Just remember that I squared is negative 1. So the opposite of negative 1 is positive 1. So if this is positive 1 plus 4 makes positive 5. Okay, now I got to multiply these two together. And I'm going to need more room here, so I'm going to slide up just a little bit to kind of move on, show some work. Okay, so let's now take x squared and multiply it by all this. So x squared times x squared is x to the 4th. X squared times negative 4. X squared times 5 Okay, let's take negative 3 now times all this. So negative 3 times x squared is negative 3x cubed. Negative 3x times that would be a positive 12x squared. Negative 3 times that would be a negative 15x. Now let's multiply the negative 4 times all that. So negative 4 times x squared is negative 4x squared. Negative 4 times negative 4x would be a positive 16. And negative 4 times positive 5 would be negative 20. All right, so now let's take all that, add it together, and add up all these like terms. So you get x to the 4th minus 7x cubed. Okay, now you got to be careful here. That's 13x squared. This is going to be x. That's going to be minus 20. And there you have it. So we went from the zeros to the factors to the polynomial. There you go. Okay, so make sure you like this video. I really would appreciate it if you did that. And subscribe to the channel. Go back to MATHguide.com. Check out our text-based lessons, interactive quizzes, and of course the instructional videos. I've got hundreds of them. All right, take care.